are going live.
Okay.
3,
We got all the panelists there?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Good to start, Deepak. Over to you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on bilateral energy revolution. My name is Deepak Raj Gupta. I'm a National Chair of Australia-India Business Council. As you know, Australia-India Business Council was formed in 1986 through a joint initiative of the Australian and Indian government on the vision of two forward-thinking Prime Ministers that time, Prime Minister Bob Hawke and Rajiv Gandhi, who recognized the immense potential for the bilateral trade between our two nations. And today we see the benefit of that vision through a strong collaboration across the key sector, including trade, defense, and energy. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm dialing from the land of Ngunnawal people, and I pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. I also like to acknowledge our very, very esteemed panelists. We got Honorable Minister Chris Bowen, Minister for Climate Change and Energy in Australia. His Excellency Gopal Bagle, High Commissioner of India to Australia. His Excellency Philip Green, OM, High Commissioner of Australia in India. Ms. Soma Banerjee, Deputy Director General of Confederation of India Industry. John Grimes, CEO, Smart Energy Council, Australia. Rajat Verma, Founder and CEO of Loham Clean Tech Energy. A warm welcome to all the AIBC esteemed members as well, distinguished participants. Some of you are joining from overseas, industry leaders joining us today, and also in my panel is my Vice Chair, AIBC Vice Chair, Amrita Zakaria, who will be taking the Q&A session. Just a quick program layout, opening notes from our key panelists on insight on Australia-India energy collaboration. Expert will explore key themes including green energy advancement in Australia and India, a policy framework and investment opportunity in the clean energy sector. At the end, we'll have a Q&A session because we got over 150 participants joined. So there will be bazaar of questions. Some of them will try to go through as soon as possible. And if not, you can leave some of your questions. We'll direct to the panelists later on, and we'll post on our social media or on our website. So without any further ado, I welcome our first panelist, Honorable Minister Chris Bowen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
Chris,
good.
welcome. And just before Chris Chris is Australia Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Minister Bowen plays a key role in shaping the country's renewable energy policies, emission reduction strategy, and transition toward net zero future. His leadership focuses on energy sector, a long relationship with India and AIBC. AIBC had him on a keynote speaker on various events on the various portfolio Chris had. Culturally, Chris is passionately engages himself on various Indian festivals, especially Holi. If you are in Sydney next month, please join him on a very colorful Holi celebration. Over to you, Minister.
Well, thanks, Deepak Raj. Thank you for that very warm introduction, and hello to everyone who's watching. And I want to begin, as we do in Australia, by acknowledging the Indigenous people of Australia, Australia's First Nations people, and the traditional owners of the land I'm speaking to you from, who are the Darug people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Well, thank you for convening this important conversation. I also want to acknowledge my friends, High Commissioner Bagley and High Commissioner Green, who are both doing excellent jobs in developing not only the bilateral relationship, but making renewable energy a focus of it. And I know High Commissioner Bagley and High Commissioner Green share that common passion. And High Commissioner Green, when he was Australia's ambassador to Germany, made green hydrogen the centerpiece of our bilateral relationship, which has been core to that bilateral relationship. And I know he's doing very, very similar excellent work now that he's posted to India, which is, of course, one of our most important diplomatic appointments. I'll keep my remarks brief, Deepak Raj, because there's plenty of people who plenty of very esteemed speakers. Other than to say, I think that it's fitting that renewable energy be at the centre of this most important bilateral relationship, and give an update from my point of view and the point of view of the Australian government. I think we're going well. There's much more to do. But I think the signing of the India-Australia Renewable Energy Partnership last year by the two Prime Ministers, and then to be implemented by me and Minister Joshi, is a very, very important document. I regard it as a very fine bilateral relation document. It's in keeping with the best practice of all our bilaterals across the country, across our different arrangements. I think it's one of the most comprehensive, one of the most detailed, and one of the most substantive. And when I look at some of the practical things underneath it, perhaps the one that draws my attention the most, the one I'm most interested in, the one I think is most exciting out of all of them, is the Australia-India Rooftop Solar Trading Academy. When you consider that the Modi government has an ambition for 10 million rooftop solar installations, when you consider that Australia already has achieved 4 million off our smaller number of roofs, obviously, but we've achieved 4 million rooftop solar installations. We have learnt one or two things along the way, although, of course, we have much more to learn. And I think that there's a great area of collaboration there. That Australia-India Rooftop Solar Training Academy will train 2,000 technicians in its first 2 years. And I think it's important that it has particular focus on female technicians and young people, because we have to acknowledge that renewable energy more broadly can be very male dominated, but yet there's a massive opportunity for the creation of female job opportunities. And I think it's very good that will focus on that element in India. Apart from that, in addition, the Make It in India and Future Made in Australia agendas are very well aligned. Some people put to me that this is some form of competition or some form of tension. But I don't see it that way at all. We all need to diversify our supply chains when it comes to renewable energy. So we want India making more things. We want India making things and us importing them from India in our renewable energy supply chain. We want to make more things in Australia. We want to make solar panels in Australia. We want to make more batteries in Australia. We want to be a reliable supply partner for countries like India to help on the transition. And I think those two agendas are very complementary. And finally, I'll just finish on this point, Deepak Raj, is hydrogen. And there's been a lot of work through the India-Australia Green Hydrogen Task Force as well. I just want to say this is tough work. This is challenging work, but it's important. And the death of the green hydrogen industry has been much exaggerated. It is challenged, but it is important. And when people ask me what the future of green hydrogen is, I say to them, well, show me something else which can replace natural gas, whether it's from Russia or anywhere else. When it comes to heavy industry, there's nothing else that can replace natural gas. So green hydrogen will work because it has to. And again, we're proud of the fact that in Australia, we're home to around a quarter of the world's green hydrogen developments. And despite some publicity and some setbacks, about 20% of those are already operating or under construction. It shows that it has such an important role to play. So look, I'll end on this point. The government relationship is very important and in very good working order. I've enjoyed my working relationships across the board with Minister Singh and now Minister Joshi, and on the other side of my portfolio as well. But separately and equally importantly is the 1.5 relationship, which you're leading here, and other organisations like the Clean Energy Council and the Smart Energy Council have done an excellent job in developing that 1.5 partnership, industry to industry, working together on matters of mutual benefit. I think as I look around the world, I think the Australia-India 1.5 track is as good as any I see around the world, and long may it continue, and I'm happy to support it in any way I can. So I'll leave my remarks here. I'm looking forward to hearing from my counterparts. I'll stay on the line for a little while and listen to them, and I wish you all the best for your deliberations.
Thank you, Minister Bowen. I'm sure there'll be bizarre question coming your way on a Q&A session, but thank you so much for such a comprehensive insight. Our next panelist is the Excellency High Commissioner of India to Australia, Mr. Barclay. Mr. Barclay has extensive diplomatic experience, particularly in strengthening bilateral relations between Australia and India. He has been instrumental in advancing strategic partnership, including energy cooperation, sustainable development initiative. Over to Your Excellency, Mr. Barclay.
Thank you very much, Deepak, for such a wonderful and fantastic introduction. Good afternoon to everyone. The Honorable Chris Bowen, Minister for Climate Change and Energy, our distinguished colleague, His Excellency Philip Green, the Australian High Commissioner in India, Deepak, your good self, the National Chair of AIBC, your entire team, and I think Ms. Soma Banerjee, who is the DDG CII, one of the panelists, John, our good friend here, the CEO of the Smart Energy Council, Rajat, CEO of Lohom, all the distinguished representatives from the Indian industry and the Australian industry and industry bodies. Once again, namaskar. Well, good afternoon from here, but I think it's still good morning in India. So we might as well say good day, as they say in Australia. And on that note, I might say that I was just looking up the weather for curiosity's sake, and I find that the temperatures, the maximum and the minimum in New Delhi are roughly the same today as in Canberra. Not many days are like. But it relates to, of course, the theme of today, it's Australia and India's path to a greener future. I would like to compliment the new leadership of AIBC for very quickly in the new tenure, arranging this very important interaction. I would like to thank the Honorable Minister for his enormous support to this strong pillar of the comprehensive strategic partnership, and also appreciate the work being done by the Australian High Commission in New Delhi and their colleagues all over India under my distinguished colleague, Philip. I think I would not dwell too much on India's commitment under the Paris Agreement, which you all are aware of. I would just like to say that the fourth biennial update report of India submitted to the UNFCCC highlights the significant progress. And I mention this because the national directive from our leadership in this regard is extremely clear. And as a result of that, in 2020, India was able to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 7.9% compared to 2019. Our goals are ambitious and they are supported by strong policies, National Solar Mission, the Green Hydrogen Mission, and the expansion of the electric mobility. You all are aware of also the Prime Minister's Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, and the Honorable Minister referred to the solar rooftop work. We have the target of deploying 10 million solar rooftops launched last year in February, so about a year now. But one particular element that I would like to especially point out is the recently launched National Critical Mineral Mission, which aims to foster self-reliance in critical minerals, crucial for high-tech and clean energy sectors. It encourages both public and private sector involvement and has an outlay of over Australian dollar 3 billion. It encompasses the entire mineral value chain from exploration to recycling and includes incentives for asset acquisition abroad, regulatory fast tracking, and the establishment of mineral processing parks to bolster India's strategic mineral reserves and technological innovation. Now, this is exactly where the synergies and the partnership between Australia and India become important, because while India has the world's largest growing renewable energy market, which will continue to grow in future, Australia is endowed with vast critical mineral reserves, and India possessing a dynamic and skilled workforce, we must collaborate to build a diversified, resilient, secure, and sustainable renewable energy supply chain. This collaboration is not just an opportunity, but a necessity. We also recognize that addressing climate change requires a collaborative and multi-sectoral approach. And to this end, we have established the framework between the two governments, which involves India-Australia Energy Dialogue and a number of joint working groups. The major outcomes of these dialogues and meetings have been the India-Australia Renewable Energy Partnership. And I'm very grateful for the guidance of the two ministers, and in particular here, Minister Bowen, who is very popular not only with the Indian diaspora, but all those who work in the domain of renewable energy to meet the targets that our leadership has set for us. In this area, I think solar PV, the Honorable Minister referred to the work being done by, for example, the Smart Energy Council and many other stakeholders. There is, in the area of green hydrogen, there is India-Australia Green Hydrogen Task Force. We have an energy storage and circular economy focus as well. And the two-way investments are perhaps the most important. And I completely agree with Minister Bowen when he mentioned about the compatibility and collaborative potential of Future Made in Australia and Make in India. I think there is enormous scope for the industry and businesses on both sides to understand where their respective competencies help us to synergize their potential and their capabilities and to fit in the value chain at those places. And as government, as High Commission, we are very happy to facilitate their interactions. While the government sets the stage for cooperation, it is imperative that the private sector spearheads the efforts, particularly in renewable energy investments. And in this context, I'm very happy to note that the Australia-India CEO Forum's joint working group had put their recommendations to the respective trade ministers last October. These recommendations highlight a special focus on future energy within SECA, the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement under negotiation, advocates preferential treatment and support for investments, while also promoting green hydrogen, now integral to our recent policy initiatives in India. I'm also very happy to note that a very strong delegation under Secretary Mines attended IMARC in Sydney last October, and they also visited several academic institutions and industry facilities in NSW as well as in Western Australia. And I am happy to note that in Critical Minerals Conference, which will be held in Darwin in the month of June this year, we hope to put up again a strong delegation from India. The objective of these efforts is to bring the industry and research and academia together so that we can leverage the best in both countries for the benefit of our two peoples as well as for the region. I would like to also mention that here the important initiative of the Australia-India Critical Minerals Research Hub, which has a joint venture between Monash University in Australia and IIT Hyderabad in India. It held a very useful symposium in the recent months. Initiatives like this and the India-Australia Technology and Innovation Challenge are also geared towards the commercialization of the cutting-edge technologies. India and Australia are also cooperating multilaterally, as seen in the Quad Clean Energy Supply Chain Diversification Program and the Wilmington Declaration released by the leaders of Quad countries in September last year. It strongly features climate and clean energy action. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we advance forward, let the partnership between India and Australia stand as a beacon for international collaboration in renewable energy. We aim not just to discuss the future, but to forge it through bold commitments, strategic investments, and steadfast cooperation. By fostering diverse clean energy supply chains and bolstering energy security, we actively contribute to the Paris Agreement, speeding up global decarbonization efforts. In conclusion, I would say that new pathways will transform our capacity into joint technological and investment partnerships. In an age where change is rapid, delay is a luxury we cannot afford. Collaboration, synergizing, and complementing are urgent and essential. The High Commission of India stands committed to supporting complementary initiatives and nurture collaborations advantageous for both countries and wider global community. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency Bagley. You illustrated very well, and I know since your arrival last year, you've been focusing on so much on Australia-India relationship, and I think it has gone to the next level, and we like to work very close with you as an institution or business council, a conduit between Australia, India, and our members. So thank you so much again, Mr. Barclay. Now we got our panelist, His Excellency Philip Green OM, as the Australia High Commissioner of Australia to India. High Commissioner Green is deeply involved in enhancing trade, investment, and diplomatic ties between the two nations. Apart from other industry initiatives, his work includes fostering collaboration in renewable energy, critical minerals, and green hydrogen, or drive a sustainable energy future. Thank you for making yourself available, High Commissioner. I know you were traveling and I think you're in Mumbai today, but I really appreciate your commitment toward this particular sector. Over to you, Excellency Philip Grain.
Well, thank you, Deepak. And it seems only a day or so ago that you were in my office talking about issues like this, and great to have the opportunity to engage with you and this illustrious panel. Can I just make reference to others who have spoken? I mean, Chris Bowen really is one of the true drivers of this government. And whenever we have had an idea of what we could do between Australia and India and green energy matters, he's always been a huge supporter. And it was great with his support and that of Minister Joshi that we got the Renewable Energy Partnership across the line just in last November in the meeting between Prime Ministers Albanese and Modi. And to you, Gopal Bagle, it is just super to have someone of your skill and effectiveness on the other side of the scene. I feel every day a sense of partnership between you and me. You're focusing on India's interests and I'm focusing on Australia, but the truth is that there is a huge amount that we can achieve together. I would like, Deepak, just to make 3 quick points because a lot of the important things have already been said. The first point I want to make is that from my perspective here, there is just a vast amount of complementarity between Australia and India in the green energy sector. Sitting here in Delhi, you cannot help but be struck by the massive rollout in new industries where India will be not just a regional player, but a global player. And whether that's in electric vehicles or whether it's batteries or whether it's the manufacture of solar panels or whether it's the movement towards green steel, the scale of what India is seeking to achieve is huge. And because Australia is a very different sort of economy, where there is huge complementary advantage between us. So in each of those fields, EVs, batteries, solar panels, green steel, you can see an Australian engagement, whether that's in critical minerals or whether it's in polysilicon or whether it's in the effort that we are making around skilling up an Indian workforce to be able to prepare to deploy 10 million solar rooftops. And in each of these, there is a good part of the supply chain that will be in Australia and a good part that will be in India. And the scale of the opportunity is such that we can each benefit massively, even as we create supply chains where the other is also making a great fortune out of it. So the first point is that we are at a wonderful juncture of economic complementarity. The second point to say is that both governments are working very hard to make the most of it. And you may know that there's been a huge effort by our government to ramp up its effort with India in recent years. And we've seen the establishment of a new Consulate General in Bangalore. We've established the Centre for Australia-India Relations, which in particular helps driving trade links and particularly the value of the diaspora, about which I'll speak later. But we've also established the Australia-India Business Exchange. And a key focus of that is being able to bring businesses together so that they can work in fields like green energy. And just for everyone here, I think it's important to know that in India's Energy Storage Week, which we had just a few months ago, Australia was the country with the largest number of businesses who came as delegates to that meeting. And that was supported by the Australia-India Business Exchange and my colleagues in Austrade. It works the other way as well. And Gopal mentioned the fact that there was a 50-member Indian delegation to IMARC in Sydney. I want to particularly call out the Smart Energy Council in this because they have been super partners for us in making sure that the right connections are made between Australian and Indian business. But the final thing that we're doing to try to make the most out of this moment of complementarity is in the field of trade agreements. And as you may know, we already have in force for the last 18 months the first phase of our free trade agreement, which is called ECTA. Now, that is already allowing vehicle manufacturers like Mahindra, whom I think are on this call, they're already benefiting from duty-free access to the Australian market. And the number of Indian cars that has come into Australia has more than doubled in the last year. And I know that those are all traditional vehicles, but it's very clear that Indian car manufacturers have an ambition to bring electric cars to Australia, which will bring down the cost of electric cars in Australia and help us scale up our effort against the climate change challenge. And in other fields, like critical minerals, another firm which is on the line, Legacy Iron Ore, is benefiting the other way from low or no tariffs for minerals such as tungsten, which are part of the green supply chain. Now, that's all good, but we want more, and that's why we're negotiating the second phase of the free trade agreement, which we call CECA. And under that, we would like to reduce to zero the tariffs for all critical minerals and relevant ores, things like refined copper and critical minerals. Final point I want to make, Deepak, is about people. We are enormously supported in this bilateral relationship by the fact that there are now 1 million people of Indian origin who call Australia home. And they're making contributions to our society across the board. But I'm particularly focused on the contribution that they can make in the area of business. These are people who know the Australian environment, they know the Indian environment, and they can really supercharge our business effort. And let me tell you, when those business delegations come from Australia to India, very frequently people of Indian origin are almost 50% of those on it. So that is a huge advantage that I have that many of my counterparts who have similar ambitions to engage with India on renewable energy just don't have. That's the special advantage that Australia has. Deepak, I'll leave it there and leave as much room as we can for question and answers, but thank you once again for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Yes, rightly said, the diaspora plays a very important role, and we have seen. And in our council, we have a mix of businesses from India and Australia as well. And as you, in our meeting, you discussed, the relationship has grown, and particularly the energy you're putting in India. In fact, High Commissioner Green has seen more India than many of us. He just went to Jaipur and traveling, and this is how you make good connection. Thank you much. Thank you so much, High Commissioner. I'm sure there'll be some question pointed to you as well later on. Now we got Ms. Soma Banerjee, Deputy Director General at the Confederation of Indian Industry. Soma Banerjee brings significant expertise in industry policy, energy infrastructure, business strategy. Her leadership at CII supports India's energy transition and promote cross-border partnership in the sector. Over to you, Ms. Banerjee.
Thank you very much and good day, as was said by High Commissioner Bagli. My greetings particularly to Minister Bowen. I think I met you last time when I was there on a similar engagement. High Commissioner Bagli and of course High Commissioner Philip Green. Also my greetings to co-panelists and all who have joined this webinar. It's my honor to be a part of this dialogue and engagement. And I can't reiterate more how each one of you have really spelled out what's so essential and important in between the relations on India and Australia as far as new energy, renewable energy and climate change is concerned. The first thing that strikes me is the two countries are so committed and so complementary in their goals that it's very easy and a natural synergetic relationship that develops, because here you have one almost complementing, like was said by my earlier panelists, the other on what they have set out to be. India and Australia actually are standing at the forefront, I would say, of global energy transition, demonstrating the commitment to a sustainable, secure, and economically viable energy future. With ambitious climate goals, cutting-edge policies, and large-scale renewable energy deployment, India is paving the way for a green energy tomorrow. As far as scaling renewable energy and critical mineral supply chain, that is one area of huge collaboration. You have heard these words in my earlier speakers when they were saying. So when it comes to India, it's all about scale. We are a huge market. We are having a strength of 1.4 billion people in this country, and the hunger just doesn't stop. We really want more and more of it, as was said. It has already achieved as a global leader in renewable energy, setting an ambitious target of 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel by 2030. But to do this, India has made significant strides, both by expanding the solar and wind projects, enhancing battery storage capabilities, and now looking more and more for enhancing the supply chain of critical minerals essential for clean energy technologies. And in this case, I would like to give the example of the collaboration between India's CABIL and Australia's CMO, who have already been reinforcing the supply chain resilience between the two countries. With Australia's vast reserves of lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements, India is hoping to secure access to essential resources for its clean energy transition and ambition to become an EV manufacturing hub. Further encouraging Australian investments in India, critical mineral ecosystem, both nations can ensure a stable supply chain, the Indo-Pacific region. Next, I come to green hydrogen, which is again a very big buzzword. I understand Minister Bowen's reference that there are criticism or there are doubts expressed, but you're right, sir. I don't think we have another replacement to natural gas at this point than green hydrogen. So it is green hydrogen the way that we have to move towards. Green hydrogen is set to revolutionize the green energy landscape, and India is playing a part of the change. The India-Australia Green Hydrogen Task Force, which was established in May 2023, is a significant step towards global leadership in hydrogen electrolyzer development, green hydrogen production and fuel cell manufacturing, infrastructure development, setting global standards and regulations for hydrogen trade. India's commitment to becoming a green hydrogen hub aligns with Australia's potential as a keen hydrogen supplier, presenting an opportunity to co-develop a hydrogen economy that strengthens the Indo-Pacific's clean energy ecosystem. Apart from this, I think there was a reference just now to trade, which is also a very important thing. Yes, the APAC leader, India and Australia, can really set an example for the rest of the region. ECTA has already been in force, and we have seen renewable energy technology development, critical mineral supply chains, and now we're looking towards hydrogen production and trade. And as you said, sir, we are now moving to the next phase of ECTA, and we hope that that is going to further strengthen this. I can't but emphasize, as was said by High Commissioner Philip Green, the people connect over here. And it's very important that we also invest in building a future-ready workforce. To support the energy transition, India and Australia are and have to invest in human capital. The collaboration will focus on, as was mentioned, joint training and skill development programs in renewable energy technologies, exchange programs between industry and academic institution, commercialization of clean energy innovations, the skilled workforce, which is already in force, as was mentioned by Minister Bowen, I think will be a big area of collaboration between India and Australia when it comes to renewable energy. India has set a benchmark for a sustainable energy transition, and the collaboration with Australia can significantly enhance regional and global climate action. By deepening our cooperation in critical mineral, green hydrogen, and renewables, India and Australia can create a resilient, sustainable, and economically prosperous Indo-Pacific region. The partnership goes beyond trade. It is about shaping a clean energy future that benefits generations to come. With that, I thank you and hope to be here to listen to more.
Thank you, Ms. Banerjee, for very comprehensive detail and the role CIA plays in this sector. And as you said, and the High Commissioner agreeing that people-to-people relationship is very important. And we have seen in recent years that how it has really developed to the level that it has gone from people to business, and now government to government. So definitely we'd like to involve with the CII and see what other partnership we can form in this particular sector. Thank you so much. Now we got John Crimes, CEO of the Smart Energy Council. John is a leading advocate for Australia's renewable energy industry. His work focuses on advancing solar battery storage, hydrogen technology, as well as driving policy reform for a clean energy future. And I really thank John because he came late panelist, and appreciate you joining us and love to listen to your thoughts.
Deepak Raj, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to join today. I have 7 very brief observations, but I'd like to start also by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where I come from, the Ngunnawal people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present. Well, Minister Bowen often reminds us, very importantly, that we have very little time to waste. He tells us that there are only 58 months from between where we stand now and 2030. And there is a massive amount of transition that needs to happen in that time. In Australia, we need to hit 82% renewables. In India, you need to hit 500 gigawatts of renewables deployed on the basis. So time is absolutely against us. But I can say, working with Minister Bowen closely, that he is somebody who gets up every day, absolutely committed and driving the transition forward. So I'd also like to pay my respects and to acknowledge the absolutely fantastic work that the Minister, both here and also his counterpart in India, play. To our good friends, the High Commissioner Bagley and High Commissioner Green, as we heard, both men have deep experience in the sector, but more importantly, they have a passion for prioritising this work and for pushing it forward. They have both made this a top order priority in the relationship, and they should be congratulated for that absolutely fantastic work. To the Australian India Business Council, Deepak Raj, you and your colleagues, thank you. These conversations are so important to my fellow panelists. So 7 very brief observations. The first is the opportunity between Australia and India when it comes to the energy transition is the most compelling business opportunity that I've seen in my career. The fundamentals are absolutely right. There is an amazing store of goodwill at the highest levels of both countries, and there is enormous activity happening underneath to support that ambition. I think that if I was to summarise it, it's about Australian innovation and capital meeting manufacturing scale and market mass. India is a massive market, Australia is a small market, but you put those two things together and we are natural partners to exploit not just the opportunity in our jurisdictions, but the global opportunity that this transition affords all of us. The second point that I'd make is that the time for action is now. Minister Bowen is right to remind us we only have 58 months until 2030. I think that what we need to do is actually deliver genuine projects. It's so good to hear about the critical minerals training centre on both sides, the research work, the rooftop training centre. The more we can make this real, I think that the better off we're going to be. And that's the challenge we now have. The environment is very fertile. It's just a matter now of executing against that. The third point that I'd make is that the diaspora is Australia and India's superpower. That particularly young Indians who understand India but understand Australia are the perfect bridge in terms of forging the way, but also educating their peers in the industry in Australia and India about the opportunities and what can be done on that scale. So, getting that human capital right is a huge advantage. My fifth point is, while national collaboration is essential, the states really matter. On the Indian side, you have states like Rajasthan and Gujarat, national leaders, but also Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, a range of others. On the Australian side, we have states like Victoria that are going to roll out a massive offshore wind industry. That is an area that is new in the Australian ecosystem and should be one that we target jointly as an Australia-India initiative. We have opportunities in places like Western Australia in terms of critical mineral value adding, green steel, green aluminium, and other initiatives. We have places in New South Wales that are thinking about how do we integrate high penetration rates of electric vehicles onto our grid and manage that. And India is way ahead of Australia when it comes to that experience, because today, millions and millions of two-wheelers and three-wheelers, electric two-wheelers, are plugging into the electricity grid. And so your grid operators are learning about how do you manage that uncoordinated load and how do you make that real? So how do we actually transition the transportation fleet as well as stationary electricity? My sixth point, Deepak Raj, is that there is a massive opportunity for skills and training. I think the opportunity for rooftop solar training, both performance and safety training, is really very exciting. If we can take what we've learned here in Australia and apply it to either very new entrants in India who have no background in the sector, and then work collaboratively with those companies that are very mature, very experienced in the Indian ecosystem, I think that would be a really great thing to do. Deepak Raj, my seventh and final observation is that it is important to support those business-to-business delegations. They facilitate the connections. When you get the business ecosystem in Australia and India in the same room together, magic happens. Connections are made. These projects are made real, and we actually progress very quickly. I'd like to draw people's attention to two quick opportunities. The first is that the Smart Energy Council will be assisting the Austrade with an Indian delegation to India, so an Australian delegation to India, on the 19th, the 26th of March, in support of His Excellency Philip Green. And we are still open for people to express EOIs to join that delegation. It is being partly subsidised by the Australian government. And those that would like to join, please shoot me an email at ceo@smartenergy.org.au. The second opportunity is an opportunity here in Australia. On the 9th and 10th of April, the Smart Energy Council is holding our annual conference and exhibition. Over 130 exhibitors, 15,000 delegates, 350 expert speakers. The good news, it's a festival of smart energy innovation and transition, and you can attend entirely free of charge. We will be working to showcase the work of the Indian government and the Indian partnership. High Commissioner Bagley, we'll be very excited to extend an invitation to you to present. We will be holding an Australia-India Renewable Energy Roundtable on the sidelines of that event. You are all invited. We're very excited about this partnership and this work. So let me stop there, Deepak Raj, because I know that we want to maximise time for questions, and thank you for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you, John. You reminded me that movie Magnificent Seven with your 7 very important points. So that's very, very important and to the point. And as you said, people-to-people skills and training is very important. And I always believe Australia and India has a lot in common in there. Especially India has expertise and resources. Australia always had the expertise. So I think we combine that together, we'll have a very skillful workforce. So thank you so much for your input. Now we'll move to our final panelist, young Rajat Verma. Rajat is the founder and CEO of Loham Cleantech Technology. Rajat is a pioneer in sustainable energy solution, particularly in battery recycling, resource recovery. Under his leadership, Loham is the front of Indian circular economy for critical minerals, contributing to a cleaner and resilient energy. Over to you, Rajat.
Thank you, Deepak. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be part of this India-Australia business webinar and to address a very distinguished audience, including Minister Bowen, High Commissioner Bagle, High Commissioner Green, and other respected co-panelists. I'd like to begin with a small story. In the early 1900s, British geologists discovered that the beach sands of Travancore, which is now Kerala in the southern part of the country, contain monazite, a mineral rich in thorium and rare earth elements. Early on, these sands were exported to Europe primarily for thorium extraction. In 1950, this is 75 years ago, India established Indian Rare Earths Limited. It was a government-owned company tasked with extracting rare earth elements and thorium. IRL set up a processing plant in Kerala where it started separating, just give me 1 second. I'm sorry, I'm being told that my video is not coming out clearly, but I can see myself, so I'll continue speaking, not sure where the problem is. But IRL started separating a processing plant in Kerala, where it started separating rare earth oxides from monazite. And by 1960s, India was one of the only countries outside of Soviet Union and the West to have a functioning rare earth processing industry. In the 1990s and 2000s, China flooded the market with cheap rare earths, forcing many Western and Indian processors to scale down operations. Although India's rare earth processing industry stagnated, India never shut its capacity completely down, unlike other countries like the US. This is now proving to be crucial as rare earths gain strategic prominence. India is now ready to scale this production. The government has internally set an ambitious target of achieving 10% of global share in rare earths over the next 5 years. We come through this to a very fundamental point, and which has been often emphasized in the webinar so far. Energy transition hinges on critical minerals and their processing or refining. The scale of energy transition is staggering, and the critical minerals processing capacity needed is equally staggering. A gigawatt of wind energy requires over 200 metric tons of rare earth elements. A gigawatt of green hydrogen electrolyzer requires over 400 kilos of platinum group metal. As countries commit to net zero, securing and developing refining expertise in these minerals is becoming as important as securing energy itself. At Loham, my company, we've had first-hand experience navigating this challenge. We started as a lithium-ion battery recycler, but quickly realized that recycling alone isn't enough. The real challenge is producing high-purity battery materials via refining activities, an art perfected by China. A seemingly small increase in lithium carbonate purity from 99.5 to 99.8% can raise its value by almost 10 to 15%. So as a company, we focused on developing technology to refine nickel, lithium, cobalt to high-precision battery-grade minerals. Over time, we saw this challenge wasn't limited to battery minerals. It extended across the entire critical mineral spectrum. Solving it required a multidisciplinary approach. Chemists, material scientists, chemical engineers, metallurgists, industrial engineers, and data scientists working together. And in this rapidly evolving industry, you won't find readily trained talent. But India's industrial base offered unexpected adjacencies. For example, in the final step of refining cobalt sulfate, we need to crystallize a salt efficiently while minimizing energy use. Our breakthrough? Learning from India's sugar industry, the second largest in the world, where crystal formation is a well-optimized process. The results, no pun intended, were very sweet. The kind of cross-industry innovation underscores the depth of talent available in India which can be leveraged for critical minerals processing at scale. Today at Loham, we work with minerals such as lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, platinum, palladium, copper, and neodymium, amongst other minerals. We started our journey a mere 7 years ago and have already made the periodic table a very fundamental DNA of the organization. Beyond technology and talent, it has been mentioned again in the webinar so far, trade between India and Australia in this sector holds massive potential. The target for bilateral trade is 100 billion Australian dollars by 2030, and critical minerals alone could contribute up to maybe 15 to 20% of that increased target that we have. But the opportunity does not stop there. Together, we can supply third markets like the US and EU, where the demand for battery minerals and other critical minerals is projected to be north of $100 billion. India and Australia bring distinct but complementary strengths. Australia's resource wealth and mining expertise, combined with India's cost-efficient refining and chemical processing capabilities, can help us forge a very, very compelling partnership. Our own benchmarking has shown that we at Loham can recycle and refine lithium-ion batteries at cost structures very similar to that of China. We are eager to collaborate with Australian companies to leverage these strengths, whether through refining partnerships, technology sharing, joint exploration efforts. The energy transition is a global challenge, and by working together, we can certainly play a defining role in shaping its future. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here. Happy to address any questions later in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rajat Verma. Really appreciate your input in this particular sector. Before we go to Q&A, any panelists would like to add any points if they wish to? All good. I hand over to our moderator, AIBC Vice Chair, Amrita Zakaria.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, everyone, for joining us at today's event. And during our 30-minute Q&A session, we'll address as many questions as possible. Keep submitting your questions via the chat window. There's a Q&A function there that allows you to do that. We will get to as many as possible. And if we can't answer all the questions during the session, we will follow up afterward. So let's get started. The first question is for Honourable Minister Chris Bowen MP. Could you please share your perspective on the role of nuclear energy in Australia's green energy strategy and its potential to assist India in this area?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. Australia's situation is very different to many other countries. With our very strong renewable energy potential, we don't have the need to do renewable energy. We're happy when other countries choose to. That's entirely a matter for those countries. But when you look at the fact that Australia has no nuclear industry, it would take many, many years to get the nuclear industry up and running. It would take 20 years at least to build a nuclear reactor and to build the nuclear skills, and it is the most expensive form of energy available. So when you have renewable energy, which is so much cheaper and faster, supported by batteries and pumped hydro and gas, peaking and firming, that's the path that we're going down.
Thank you, Minister. The next question that we have is from Anil Wadhwa. It's for Mr. John Grimes. India is the second largest importer of polysilicon in the world, while China is the largest producer of solar panels, accounting for 75% of global production. China's dominance extends to nearly 80% of the manufacturing stages of solar panels, including polysilicon ingots, wafers, cells, and modules. For India and Australia to collaborate in this area, they need a structured and time-bound plan to reduce this dependence and create a new supply chain. The question for you, John, is, has any thought been given to creating such a roadmap in the forthcoming CECA polysilicon imports from Australia should not attract the current 50% duty for imports to India?
It's a very exciting question and a very timely question as well. The Australian government has actually invested in supporting solar manufacturing and battery manufacturing in Australia, which means there's been detailed work done to look at which parts of the supply chain can we add the most value. I think in the relationship with India, there are two that really stand out, and the questioner has really identified them. The first is polysilicon. We can use the world's most abundant renewable energy resources to make zero carbon polysilicon in Australia. Polysilicon where there's no question about the provenance, what's the labor conditions, the financing conditions, that the inputs have gone into that product, and supply that into the Indian market. I think that would be a really great lighthouse project to bring to life this partnership. The second is solar panel innovation. If you pick up a solar panel, any of those solar panels produced in China, 92% of the intellectual property in those solar panels originated in Australia. Australia are the gold medal winners in solar panel innovation. There are great companies like SunDrive that we took to India that have developed a way to use copper in solar cell manufacturing rather than silver. It's more efficient and it's much cheaper. It's essential that we deliver to the Indian manufacturing industry the cutting edge solar technology so that India doesn't invest and build technology that is rapidly out of date and not competitive. So this is a collaboration of knowledge and innovation, and they are the two standout opportunities from my perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for that detailed answer. That's much appreciated. The next question from our panel, and thank you, Kushagra Nigam, for your question for Ms. Soma Banerjee. Being from Bendigo Kangan Institute, how can we work to train solar technicians in India, especially if we are able to design practical vocational training programs, but delivering the training program in India, which will require local and offshore support?
Thank you very much. So India hosts something called the Green Skill Council. I mean, there are skilling councils for every sector. The Green Skills Council is primarily for the renewable energy sector, and they basically collaborate with various institutions, industries, as well as training institutes who would like to be a part of the training skill program over there. And what happens is there is a very close academia industry collaboration within that council. It's partly run by the government, partly by industry. So the curricula is built according to what is needed in the industry. And we also offer, what they also offer is apprenticeship at the work floor, at the factory floor, which gives them a direct exposure to what happens. So you need to probably get in touch with the Green Sector Council, Green Skill Council, and of course, CI will be happy to connect you to the right people.
Thank you, Ms. Banerjee. The next question we have is for His Excellency Gopal Bagle. What initiatives are in place to help Australian businesses collaborate with India in the renewable energy sector?
Well, thank you very much for this question. May I know where this question comes from?
It's just from our group, the audience. I don't have a name.
All right. Okay, fine. Wonderful. So, see, the thing is, I mean, I wanted to ask that question so as to focus my answer. There are both within the CEO Forum, which is the overall guiding body, and under various initiatives that through which we promote business to business interactions, there are a number of ways in which the businesses can connect directly. Now, one such example I mentioned, and I think my distinguished colleague and friend Philip also mentioned, IMARC. So the visit to these major events in each other's country, that is number one thing. Second is, of course, collaboration with the research. I think that is very important. And what we try to do is promote the business and research linkages, because that is the way in which the technology will progress and will be adopted at an industrial scale and then commercial scale. The third is to work with the organizations which specialize in certain areas and whose job it is to promote cooperation between two countries in renewable energy. And one example here is John, who's very well knowledgeable about India and the requirements in India and what the two countries can bring together. The fourth, obviously, is supporting the startup systems. Now, I'm very happy to tell you that when we have these exchanges, it's not only about IT. When we are now seeing an increasing trend where the Australian and Indian startups are collaborating in areas beyond information technology, and this includes clean energy and recycling, processing of wastes, but also solar manufacturing and also skills. The last point, taking up from the skills related question, I would say this is a matter of national priority for us. Because in India, as you know, I mentioned the 10 million target for the rooftop solar. Now, you would, of course, require manpower to install them and then keep them servicing, keep them in good condition to maintain them. There are obviously potential that we have in India. There are also strengths that we have in India. And that's exactly where we can have a very enriching collaboration and cooperation with Australia. There are institutes in Australia and the institutes in India which can come together. The industry bodies, the skilling bodies can also help in bringing them together, facilitating their cooperation. So this is the fifth vector, but perhaps in terms of long-term collaboration at the grounds level, at the people's level, I think this is the most important.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The next question is for His Excellency Phil Green. The question is, can India and Australia collaborate on artificial intelligence in green energy, where AI comes from India and green energy from Australia?
Well, the short answer is yes. We need all of the skills and capabilities and inputs to build a green energy capability on both sides of the Australia-India partnership. And we've already heard how Australia is strong in many of the underlying skills for taking forward the green energy future. I've outlined some of the capabilities that Australia has in terms of inputs to Indian industry. But your questioner is right that a new way in which we can speed up the process of greening our futures is the use of high technology. And tech is for us an underlying sector, a horizontal that goes across all of the verticals between Australia and India in trade. And let me put it this way. Australia and India are also complementary in this field because our society is one which has a relatively high level of innovation and new ideas. But as one of the panelists said rightly before, we don't have the scale of our economy to be able to bring all of those ideas to market in a way that is most effective. India is now a place where Australian tech can come and scale and globalize and make a real difference, not only to our two economies, but across the world. So the short answer is yes, we definitely need AI and all technical capability behind the effort on greening our industries.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The next question is, okay. The next question is to Ms. Soma Banerjee from Pada Sai, professor at Aditya University. Why is solar energy adoption still low in domestic households in India despite its potential? What are the key barriers, cost, awareness, infrastructure, or policy? How can we improve adoption rates?
Thank you very much. That's a very valid question and something which is constantly on the minds of policymakers as well as industry. there are various types of solar, right? I mean, the grid solar is one area of solar. And as you know, solar or wind or all of that is it's infirm in nature. So when you're taking solar energy from the grid, you need to back it up with either storage or gas or some other form which can give you a 24/7 solar option or a renewable energy option. The grid is still trying to find those solutions. We're trying to make storage definitely more commercially viable so that it can be matched with the renewable power, which is now found a very good and affordable rate. And therefore, when I'm connected to a grid and I want more solar into my home, that is what kind of acts as a barrier as of now. The next option, which is now being popularized more and more, is for off-grid solutions. So you basically have what you heard before, rooftop solutions, where I have a solar panel on my roof. I become a prosumer, they say, whereas I produce the energy and consume the energy also. And I therefore consume more solar energy into my consumption basket. That is on the rise now, and I think it will see a phenomenal rise in the coming months because of the push and the program which has been launched by Prime Minister Modi, which is really drawing a lot of traction. And we will see a large penetration of solar rooftops, not only in the cities and urban areas which the grid has connected, but in also the semi-urban towns and villages, because this is something which you really don't need to take from the grid. And the third element is the farmers who are now understanding the importance of rooftop or of solar energy, rather, more than rooftop, because then it helps them also balance out their electricity needs. So they can use solar energy to run their pump sets, etc., in the daytime and use the excess energy for their own needs in the night. So while, yes, there are some hurdles because the grid needs to really be able to balance out renewable power, solar being one of that, with storage or with hydrogen or with natural gas, the local or the distributed energy electricity systems will, I think, be the big solution in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Banerjee. The next question that I have is from Vishwanathan. Thank you for your question. The question is, where Indian demand and Australian capabilities coverage includes smart grid technologies, including advanced analytics, pumped hydro design and management, and battery storage technologies, how can we significantly enhance bilateral collaborations in these areas? This question is directed to Mr. John Grimes.
Thank you very much for that. And I think the answer is exposure. So we took a couple of years ago a delegation of 34 Australian companies to India to coincide with Prime Minister Albanese's visit to, he was hosted by Prime Minister Modi in Ahmedabad, Gujarat state at the time. And the thing that surprised me is the diversity of the delegates. It included people who do power electronics, who do renewable ammonia generators, who do renewable energy cybersecurity specialization, who do blockchain energy services so that they can actually prove the provenance of where energy is coming from, who do the very rapid rollout of large-scale solar farms, and on and on. And so what we found is that the question is quite right. The opportunities to actually connect in a very diverse range of areas is profound. And the depth of innovation and capability in Australia is surprisingly also profound across those areas. So while we don't have the manufacturing strength in solar panel manufacture, for example, but India does, we do have real innovation in a lot of the adjunct areas, power electronics and optimization, etc. So in my view, the answer is exposure. It's about getting the players on both sides together. It's about coaching both sides about how they demonstrate that value in a timely way, and quickly partner with them with the right parts of the ecosystem that can do meaningful business engagement and develop those business transactions that really is going to underpin the economic transformation in this sector.
Thank you. Thank you for that. The next question I have is for His Excellency, Mr. Phil Green. How can Australian companies best position themselves to support India's net zero ambitions?
Oh, well, thanks, Amrita. That will depend a lot on the individual company and what their place in the market is. But I think there are some basic rules. First of all, understanding well what India's policy settings are and what the demand opportunity is in this country. Doing your due diligence and understanding the Indian environment well, looking for partners on the Indian side who will be able to help you navigate the Indian business environment. And as I said before, the use of Australians of Indian origin could be valuable in that. Now, I think what's important for the questioner to know is that in all of those fields, we in the Australian High Commission via Austrade are prepared to provide support and guidance to any Australian business who has a credible opportunity here. And we're also, like John in the Smart Energy Council, mustering delegations every week of the year for opportunities for businesses to come to India and test and stress test the place of their product in the market. So there is a lot of opportunity here, but it's a big and complex country. It's widely disparate in terms of language and culture and business practice. It pays to understand India well, and there are people like the Energy Council, like Austrade, and indeed like the bilateral business councils who can help an Australian company navigate those opportunities and occasional challenges.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green. Now, the next question is for Your Excellency, Mr. Gopal Bagle, from Anil Wadhwa. If the supply chain in critical minerals between India and Australia have to be set up quickly, it would be important for businesses to invest in each other. Are there any Indian businesses who have invested and acquired a stake in Australian critical mineral producing companies with spare resources?
Thank you very much, sir, and very good morning to you. I think there are some examples where we have Indian interests well represented in the mining and mineral sector over here, but I am not too sure if I can speak about such interests which have made good progress in connecting the critical mineral supply chain, which is your question, sir. Now, I've wondered sometimes why it is so. And in the whole value chain, I think when we talk about working with each other and working in plurilateral formats like the Quad, so that we can establish secure and sustainable supply chains, I think one of the most important factors begins in the upstream segment, which is securing the source, the minerals by themselves. I think what has happened is that there are downstream capacities also in India. So that is one sector which needs to be looked at, because once we have the upstream source from Australia, how is it to be extracted, how is it to be processed and then converted into the materials that are going to be used in these storage devices. So that downstream segment is important. But at the same time, I think it's a long-term endeavor to collaborate on extracting, prospecting, extracting, then processing and shipping the minerals. There are, of course, wonderful opportunities in Australia, and somebody mentioned, I think John mentioned about the importance of states. I have been encouraging our delegations that travel to Australia to go to different states. Philip mentioned about India's size and complexity. Well, sitting here in Australia, I can say it's not just a country; it's a continent, and a vast one at that. And we need to travel to not just to one or two centers, but to number of places to see to prospect and see. So I would say that the short answer is that we need to really encourage formation of those partnerships which can establish horizontal collaboration in the entire vertical chain at different levels, at the level of procuring the minerals, at the level of processing it, at the level of converting it into the materials that are ultimately to be used in storage devices. We have some initial, I think, encouraging signals, but I think they will need to be encouraged, and they will need to be fostered. In this context, I would mention what has, I think, already been perhaps hinted at, the Kabil and the CMO collaboration. There are other Indian companies also, both in public and private sector, that are not unfamiliar with Australia. But I think this is one of the important things that both the governments and the private sectors have to do together.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The next, and this is the final question before I hand it back to our National Chair, Deepak Raj, for closing comments and the vote of thanks. So this question is for Minister Honourable Chris Bowen, and a question on government incentives. What role do government policies and incentives play in driving private sector investment in green energy?
Well, of course, that will vary from country to country and issue to issue, but I see the role of government incentives as making what needs to happen more quickly and more cheaply. So most of the transition will occur anyway, but well-designed government incentives, certainty of investment, some financial incentives, whether it be what we call the small-scale renewable energy target or things like production tax incentives, will just make that investment a bit faster and a bit cheaper and a bit de-risked. And in Australia, certainly the majority of the investment will come from the private sector, certainly with our plans. But if we can de-risk it, if we can encourage its most efficient format, that will often come through government, well-designed, well-calibrated government incentives.
Thank you, Minister. Deepak, I'll hand it to you for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Amrita. Thank you for a wonderful interactive Q&A session. Any panelists want to add anything from the decision makers before we got Soma Banerjee there?
I'll just take a minute. I come from CII, which is the Confederation of Indian Industry, and there were several questions on how investments can be really encouraged between India and Australia. And we also heard about delegations. So, we are very much a part of the investment ecosystem in India. And for people who are looking into India, every state is having its investment summit, where they basically talk about what are the potential of the state, how you can get investments into those states and into India. So one good place to really look for what is happening in India, should I go in there, which is the state I need to go to, is that. Because if you look at those those kind of festivals rather that happen, that will give you a sampling of what is really happening in India, because it is a diverse country. There are different things, but every state is in a competitive zone. And the second thing which I wanted to also add is that there's a question on subsidies and policy support from the government. I think what India has established is they've created an ecosystem which has allowed competition to come in a fair and transparent way with the right regulatory regime, which has helped the industry grow on its own. And really, after a few years, you don't need subsidies to really become the company that needs to move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just a quick question to both the governments. We talked about skilling and training. Is there any funds or support available for people who want to upskill themselves in this particular area?
Let me start, Deepak, by saying we're deploying significant funds to support the development of the training centre, which will roll out Australian knowledge and capability on rooftop solar for the Indian market. And, we're doing that because it can help India reach its renewable energy goals. But we're also doing it because it will allow Australian businesses to be connected into India's ecosystem as it scales and grows its rooftop solar capability. Now, that's what we're doing under the Renewable Energy Partnership, and that's our top priority this year. But if that is successful, then you could imagine us looking for additional verticals where we might want to support training in India delivered by Australian companies that would allow further interaction between our renewable energy businesses on both sides.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Mr. Barclay, would you like to add something on this particular?
Yeah, Deepak, I think Philip has already mentioned about the rooftop. I would say that there are a number of opportunities here where at the national level and the state levels in India, there are skill development councils. There are central government programs, especially dedicated to cultivating skills in these areas, renewable energy related areas. And we are here, it is one of the most important focus, and I mentioned that that's a national priority for us. So we are in touch with the Australian institutions and organizations like TAFE, and we are encouraging their collaboration with the Indian counterparts. And wherever there is a possibility that they can collaborate and if there is a requirement of some support from elsewhere, I think that is something which can certainly be looked into.
Well, thank you so much. We'll have this transcript of this session available and we'll send it to you. And any question which was not answered, we'll also forward it to the relevant panelists. Well, thank you so much. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank the team behind putting the show together, the AIBC, the Contana, and our national sponsor, Commonwealth Bank and NIB. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, afternoon, wherever you are, and we look forward for many such collaborative sessions in your future.
Thank you. Thank you very much.